Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back with the episode 4 recap of The Amazing Race. I actually need to change the title because CBS lied to me and my family and said that it was episode 4 and 5, and it was only episode 4. And we are joined by Annabelle Selph, one of our patrons, who doesn't even get to have the joy of talking about somebody who just got eliminated from The Amazing Race. What a bummer. You were supposed to get 2 episodes, and instead you get a non-elimination leg, which is always the most boring thing in The Amazing Race.
I know, CBS did me dirty, but you know what? I get to podcast with my favorites here, so I will count my blessings.
Wow, that was fantastic pivot. So great job coming on. I have to say, disappointing ending because, you know, SWAT came on after the commercial break instead of More Amazing Race. But these seemed like the hardest challenges or the most difficult episode that we've watched yet. What do you guys think?
I agree. And that's why it's kind of disappointing when you get something like this where it is really difficult and where it is really dramatic and Kaylin and Haley are both suffering and it takes D'Angelo and Gary 4 hours and it all really adds up to nothing. I think I do agree. And I did watch this season. Mark and Bopper were the ones who said we're going to have to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. So I watched this the first time that they did this. But yeah, I mean, this was I was frustrated for D'Angelo and Gary. I thought it was obnoxious.
Yeah, it seems like you had to choose between something extremely tedious and precise or something very precarious, I guess, with the balancing.
Perfect word.
I've seen that. I remember the season with those kind of throwback challenges, and as soon as the watermelon showed up, I was like, oh no, this is not going to go well for somebody. So yeah, I honestly don't know which one I would pick. I can't balance, but I can't stack either, so.
I did watch you play the TRHS versus Specialist game, and so if anybody was watching that, you got to watch Annabelle in that first challenge, and she cannot stack.
Well, you know, I wasn't going to bring it up. I was hoping you wouldn't either.
Oh, you got called out.
You know, it's on video that I, in fact, cannot balance or stack. So, yeah, I don't know what I would have done at that detour. Truly,
well, hopefully, yeah, because this is, I mean. Maybe you take the watermelon challenge and you be the thrower and you just be the person who chucks the watermelons out from the truck, because that seemed like the easiest job, even though I'm sure it was tough on their arms. I, at first glance, would have said I'll take the watermelons. That's the easiest thing ever. I would lean more athletic than I would able to balance or dance. But the stacking itself seemed so difficult. And I think if you practice enough with the the balancing on your head, you can get it. And Iswar and Aparna got that really quickly. Kaylin and Haley, for what it's worth, they also got it really quickly too. Michelle and Victoria, they had a huge jump. So yeah. Some people, I guess, just had it in them, but I guess that's one that you can train versus with what happened with D'Angelo and Gary. If you have a bad base, it's going to be really hard to fully make that watermelon pyramid.
Mm-hmm. Plus with the dancing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Talk about the dancing.
I was just going to say, because, I mean, obviously you want to get it done quickly because it's a race, but there wasn't a time limit. You just had to keep it on your head. So you can move glacially slow and get it, and it would work out for you. Whereas the other one, speed is a factor, but you misplace one watermelon, you're kind of screwed. So.
Also, if the sun sets, I didn't even consider it. When it got dark, I was I don't know how they're going to finish this. It looked so much harder when you're outside.
And if you look at their pyramid, it's not a great looking pyramid there at the end.
It was a mess.
They definitely were not looking great. And I think I just had to change my microphone, so I probably sound so much better.
You sound a lot clearer now. Good
job. Whatever, StreamYard, thanks. But no, I mean, their pyramid was not great looking. It was rounded at the top. It was pretty much falling, but I guess at that point they just gave it to them because it's hey, how long are these guys supposed to stay out here? But it just goes to show, with these amazing race challenges, I would 100% do the watermelons, 100%, because I don't have the balance. I don't have the coordination. There's no way I'm going to be able to get down, do that Superman thing, and then stand up with a bottle on my head. That's never going to happen, and I know it's never going to happen. So I would do the watermelons, but you had the 2 guys built for the watermelon challenge doing the watermelon challenge, and they took 4 hours to do it. So I don't know. I give up.
And the thing with the balance, that Superman thing specifically, is your neck has to stay flat while the rest of your body is curved. That seemed crazy difficult. So there's a dog barking outside, and I didn't know dogs lived in New York City, so this is overwhelming. But yeah, I mean, you're right. The two people who were perfect for the watermelon challenge really struggled. Andy Vogel can't even do the Superman thing without the bottle. It's a beautiful point. And then Hung and Chi, we learned, have communication issues, but can still get third place. Is that what place they got?
They got 6th.
Oh,
they had a big drop.
They did pretty. Yeah, they did pretty poorly.
They did. And it was funny when they were talking about how they have communication problems at the beginning of the episode, because we haven't seen them have communication problems at all. Right. And I think we've talked numerous times about how good their communication is. And I was like, I bet you that their communication comes up in this episode. And then the other one was when Riley and Madison were like, in beach volleyball, we're used to double elimination tournaments. That's not the race, though. And I was like, this will be a non-elimination leg. This is what that will be. And that's why it's a double episode. I mean, it wasn't a double episode, but still non-elimination leg.
Good job with the foreshadowing. Yeah,
it's almost like
I thought that.
But it's almost like they weren't trying to be very subtle.
I noticed it too, because it felt so. They were like, "Here's everything wrong with us," and I was like, "There's nothing wrong with you two." So clearly, there's something wrong. Yeah, they had a huge jump down. Michelle and Victoria have a huge jump up. Really weird episode.
I think they had kind of the equalizer with the flight to Paraguay. So that was obviously helpful for kind of the teams who started in the back of the pack. But yeah, Michelle and Victoria just crushed it with the bottle.
Yeah. Well, and Alexa, what country or what continent is Paraguay on?
Shockingly not Africa. And also I want to clarify that Uruguay is also shockingly not in Africa. That was the first note that I took. I'm sure nobody is surprised by the fact that I wrote that down. Also, a little more subtle comment that she made. She said merci instead of gracias, hilarious. Which was just like, that was so subtle and so small. And I get that like you're stressed and the last thing you're thinking about is like communicating with the locals. But I thought that was a really nice touch.
That was funny. And Michelle and Victoria and Kaylin and Haley I always find the amazing. So I don't know much about Paraguay. So anybody who's like about to listen to this, I'm sorry for judging the country of Paraguay, but I always find it interesting because America, for all of our flaws, does treat women pretty well, but there are countries that don't. And so I always find it very, very sketchy when you get like Kaylin and Haley, because this happened in like one of the seasons. There was a really weird thing, and I forget who it was, and I'm sure somebody in the chat knows, but there was a really weird thing where like they kind of took them for a ride, and it felt like, and it was how Michelle and Victoria and Haley and Kaylee were the ones who got lost. And like, it's one thing if you're like D'Angelo and Gary and you're driving down some random back road and it's like, all right, if we're going to have a problem, like we have our producer with us, we have that, like, oh, but when you're Haley and Kaylee, like when they get out of the car and it's like, I'm going to go to this creepy little house over here. That's a really scary prospect. And obviously like you are on a TV show, so there is a lot more that goes into it. I'm pretty sure the cab drivers had all been like probably flagged or whatever before that to make sure that they're not crazy people, but still it's a very scary moment. And like Kaylin and Haley were really far behind because of all of this. And Michelle and Victoria also got lost, but like, man, I wouldn't want to drive down there if I was in a bus full of like 800 bodybuilders. Like that just looked like a sketchy area, and they were out there.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty freaky too. And Michelle and Victoria, Kaylin and Haley's cab driver was a woman, but when she just like ditched and like left them there, I could tell they looked scared in a way that was not just like, oh crap, we're gonna lose. They were like, we don't speak this language. We have no idea where we are. Our cab driver doesn't know where we are. That is a pretty overwhelming feeling. And I'm sure that cab driver had Google Maps and could have looked it up, but it didn't seem like it, which is a like stomach dropping kind of feeling.
Well, and I do think that also, and I don't know if you caught this, but the cameraman got out of the car at one point, and I'm pretty sure the cameraman like went over to the cab driver and was like, "Get in the car, let's go."
Yeah.
Because I don't think that they like. I mean, granted, yes, you're working on The Amazing Race, you're going around, you have a team and everything, but like you still can't go to like back road sketchy areas of these countries. Like you don't know what you're going to go into. And so I'm pretty sure that whoever that was definitely got out of the car and was like, all right, enough of this. Let's go. This is no longer about The Amazing Race. This is about like, go this way. We know where we're going, at least somewhat. Get out of here. This is ridiculous.
Something I find kind of frustrating about The Amazing Race as a viewer is the game can honestly come down to your taxi. And that just seems so frustrating from a racer's perspective. Like, you did everything right, and then you just get a taxi driver who can't navigate or, drives like a grandma or something like that. And so to have the taxi cab already being sort of an issue going into the race, that, but then you have the navigation issue, and you're in a sketchy area, and you're behind. That's a triple whammy. So
and
I don't
they,
panicking.
And to your point, they end up finishing last. And, I know if they had gotten eliminated, I don't think there's a single person who would have said, oh, well, it's because their cab was slow because they didn't do well in the first challenge. But still, like that, that must be the worst way to go. But they did trick me. I did when D'Angelo and Gary and Caitlin and Haley were both sprinting into the park at the same time. I was like, damn, this is going to be good. And then,
and then it kind of went exactly how we expected. I mean, it helped them that it got dark for both of them at some point, because that helped, because otherwise Kaylin and Haley, I'm pretty sure Kaylin and Haley, we're going to see next week when they show the time thing at the start, they're probably going to be like a solid hour or hour and a half behind D'Angelo and Gary. And I think that they just dragged it out, because they even said we know we're last, it doesn't matter. And D'Angelo and Gary thought they were last, but I'm pretty sure Kaylin and Haley were way, way further behind. And Andy Vogel brings up this point, which is kind of what I was talking about. Season 3, a cab driver took a team into a sketch area, and the team got detained by a local militia. So this is what I'm saying. I don't know anything about Paraguay, so I might just be making a giant assumption. But those are the sketchy things. And if you're Kaylin and Haley, that's frightening. That's really frightening. So all that being said, let's talk about Will and James. They won for the second time in a row. Alexa, when we were on with McKenna last week, we didn't have high expectations for Will and James really moving forward. We felt like that was going to be the only time they won, and yet here they are, $5,000 each, which sounds more exciting, I think, than it really is.
It's like a Christmas bonus. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's something. It's just funny,
I would take it
when it's coming from I always just think about prize money on CBS, and you think about the winners of this, what they win $500,000 each, and then it's and here's 1% of that, and go back home now and go spend your $5,000, which hey, I would take $5,000 right now. If anybody wants to be a patron, give us $5,000. We have the super chat open. But yeah, that's how I feel about that.
Do you get anything in Amazing Race? Obviously in Survivor, the higher you place, the higher the money payouts, and then so on down the line. But do you get paid anything for coming in last on the Amazing Race? You
do. You do get a smaller thing, but it's kind of the same thing. They also have to keep you away from everybody else. Then after that, so you kind of get your little mini vacation. Yeah, and
that's actually
Go
finish that.
I was just going to say, I think that they actually travel around, kind of they go to the final location or something like that. I'm pretty sure that's where they go, because that's when they all clap for everybody.
They're at the finish line, right?
Yeah.
I have to say, this sounds in the financial department, this sounds better than Survivor in a sense, because you potentially win $500,000, but you're splitting between your person. So, or, $1 million split between your person. But then you get it's like if Nick Wilson wins an immunity challenge and Jeff's here's $10,000. That's kind of cool. Like that, or here's another trip to Fiji. So, and then you also get the pre-merge trip, but you get it no matter what, because there's no jury. And I guess you're already on a trip while you're playing. So I don't know. I'm kind of liking the prize thing. That's something I didn't really consider.
Yeah, and they've always done this. Go ahead, Annabelle.
I was going to say, I think it only takes about 3 weeks to film the whole race, too. So you're traveling around for free.
Oh, it's quick.
And you're stressed out all the time, but you don't have to pay to go to any of these cool places. And yeah, 3 weeks is really not, if you save up a year's worth of vacation, that's fairly manageable, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not like Survivor, but The Amazing Race is so much more expensive of a show to shoot than Survivor, because you're all over the world, and plane tickets and hotels or whatever they put them in, and all of that, and with the local governments, just to make that tea drink, which I don't understand really why they had to make that and carry that with them till the end. They said that that's what they had to do, and it never came up again. So I thought that was weird, but just to make that tea drink, they probably had to shut down almost an entire road when it came to all those people who were coming in. So I mean, it does take a lot more effort and a lot more manpower with this.
And as someone who has not really watched Amazing Race, how many of those random like muddle a mojito challenges are there? Because that seemed pointless.
They normally come back. Annabelle, have you watched a lot of Amazing Race?
I have. I've watched it kind of on and off since I was like, whenever it first premiered. I was pretty young, like elementary school. So I've seen a few of those, but usually it's like a roadblock or something. It's an actual task. I never understand it when they have to do a task, but it's not a detour and it's not a roadblock. It's just something they have to do on the way to the pit stop.
I agree. And it would have made sense if like it was like last week, where it was like you got to carry your drink with you because at the end you're going to give it to somebody, and if you don't have it, then you lose, or like you have to give it to somebody at the detour or something like that. You know, like what happened with the bags last week. But there was no purpose to that. I think literally that was like hey, here's an advertisement for Takare. Have you ever had Takare? It is a drink where you just mush up a bunch of plants and put water in it. Like that's what it seemed like it was.
And they take the sip and they're like, wow, this is so refreshing. And then we got to go.
Yeah. And I don't think any of them found it refreshing. I got to be honest. It didn't seem authentic. Trying
to show the culture, but then they're like, nah, we got other stuff to get to here. Let's just move on.
Instead, we're going to go stack watermelons or dance with a bottle on our head. So with the roadblock, Alexa, I know we always like to talk about the roadblock, and the roadblock does come earlier here. So they go to the roadblock, and it's, who's trying to be musical or something like that. We always like to ask who would do this one and who wouldn't. Alexa, based on that clue, it would have had to be you, right? You said you played piano.
When I was like 6.
Okay, I never played piano, so you got an advantage.
I do recycle, so I guess that could be, I like dig through
sorry,
trash.
You live in New York. You don't recycle in New York. It goes on the curb.
Yes. It just goes on that curb that the dog was barking on like 10 seconds ago.
He was barking at the garbage. That's it.
Yeah, like I'm going to guess that's mine, but I was about to make the same comment that D'Angelo made, where he's like, my biggest claim to fame is not that I'm an NFL player, but that I can set things up from IKEA without the instructions. I would guess that I am like average to slightly above average at like putting things together. So that part I'm fine with, but luckily they didn't have to play any music because I would have really struggled with that.
Yeah, and I thought that was an interesting clue, especially after the first one where, it was the drum and everybody was nervous about the drums. And then they come back and, like Gary did it. So D'Angelo was like, this should have been mine. And then they call this one musical. And really, it wasn't musical at all. This one actually might have been better for Gary because it was building something. And I mean, D'Angelo did it so fast and got out of there so quickly. But this wasn't actually a musical thing. Annabelle, how would you have done with this roadblock?
I would say kind of similar to Alexa. I'm like average to slightly above average at putting things together. I have a puzzle on my coffee table right now that I'm currently working on.
Hey, you could build a cello then.
And I played, not cello, but I played violin in middle school, so I'm familiar with the structure at least. So not as quick as D'Angelo, but I think I could have managed all right.
There you
go.
Also,
what I thought was interesting is there's no instructions there. It's kind of like the cooking from last week where you just watch. Like this, you just looked at the cello and hoped it worked. And it seems like the biggest sticking point for everybody was the length of the strings.
Yeah.
It was that, and it was that little piece that you had to stretch the strings over, and it kept falling over. I mean, Iswar, it took him like, I don't know, like 2 hours almost. And it was just that piece that kept falling over and falling over and falling over. And I thought it was interesting how long it took him. And it took one of the beards a really long time too. While D'Angelo got out of there in like seconds, like he wasn't there long at all. So I was surprised to see how much everybody struggled with it, despite the fact that, it didn't seem that difficult to do,
Yeah, I agree. I find it so funny that Iswar and Aparna, every episode, they're going to take the opportunity to mention that they're software engineers and how they think that is relevant to everything. I mean, if I went to Cal and studied engineering, maybe I would flex all the time too, but they think it's applicable for everything. It's funny.
Yeah, this one felt the most applicable. There were a few others, and also you make a good point. software engineers versus like industrial engineers or like civil engineers. But
Yeah.
again, I am not smart enough to be an engineer, so I have no right to decide whether or not they're qualified for this. But yeah, I feel like that's their thing. Like that's their bit.
And it's funny because they're the, you know, that's their thing. And then, you know, Gary and D'Angelo are the pick things up and put things down people. And it's funny how, like, still, like, you know, a show like Survivor, they have their heroes, they have their villains, they have their challenge beasts and all of that. But the show like The Amazing Race really does just kind of like translate back to like what we see in regular everyday life, where like people kind of just fall into whatever, not like I'm not saying it's a stereotype, but like D'Angelo and Gary are the jocks who just are, they're meatheads. That's it. And Eastwar and Aparna are the brilliant, you know, nerdy, they can't do anything else. And it's like they try to bring it in anytime they can. And it's not so much them. It's like The Amazing Race. The producers are probably asking them questions like, how do you think your background is going to help you with this roadblock? And it's like, well, I'm a software engineer. So while I'm coding, I'm also kind of building a cello with my bare hands. It's like, I think James Clement might be a little bit better at building this thing than you are, Eastwar. No offense.
And yeah, and as the viewer, it helps. Like I wrote, you know, when I'm writing people down, I write down NFL, volleyball, purple. Like that's what I'm writing down. So I think it helps. It's like, oh yeah, the engineer siblings. Like, because you know we're on week 4, and I still can't tell you which one is Kaylin and which one is Haley.
Well, it also, yeah, it doesn't help. That's like a Dr. Seuss book. They're doing that on purpose to annoy us with Kaylin and Haley. I've said their names so much tonight, it's lost all meaning. I feel like I'm tongue-tied the entire time, and it has just lost all meaning. I have no idea what's going on anymore. But yeah, I was just really surprised that this roadblock took some people as long as it did. And then it was even more interesting to me that then when they actually did get to the detours, I was really surprised how fast some of the people were actually able to do the bottle challenge, how fast Hung and Chi were actually able to do the watermelon challenge. And it didn't seem like, I would have thought the balancing on your head would have been harder, but I also don't think that those were actually real glass bottles, because at the end we see, what is it? Leo and Alana, they smash each other over the head with them. So I don't know what they were made out of that they were breaking like that, but there must have been something with the balance there, because there's no way they're all able to do that in like 5 or 6 tries every time.
I would hope there's not, because I mean, those people were having to make multiple attempts. I would hope there wouldn't be just whatever was in the bottle and glass flying everywhere every time they screwed up. That would be a liability, I would think.
Right. And I was thinking that too, because everyone kept smashing them, and it's like, is someone going to come and like sweep it up every single time? Mm-hmm. I bet they were made of like sugar or like, I don't feel, when you know movies, when people, like when you hit someone with a glass in a movie, like what's that usually made out of?
Glass. They hate actors.
They
hate them.
Just beat the crap out of everybody.
They really, that's real blood, Alexa. What are you talking about? There's no movie magic there.
You're
that's
right.
Real
Yes.
Blood.
Yeah. Yes, these actors
Any Quentin
really.
Tarantino movie, those people are really being shot. Like that's real.
That was a flamethrower.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. See.
There you go, Alexa.
That was a reference.
Name dropping a movie. My brain. Oh no.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. That was great. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what to do.
Last movie I saw in theaters. Anyways.
But Gamer Girl did say in here, Mom told me movie and TV glasses made out of sugar. That had to have been what it was. Because I think also Will at one point went to put it on his head, and like he squeezed too hard and it just exploded in his hand.
Yeah. And they looked, luckily they were like filled with water. They only looked like they were half full. So it worked out. But I was wondering that too, Annabelle. I was like, this seems unsafe and like very inefficient.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. I'm trying to see what else we had the yield in this episode. Nobody yielded again. Is the yield a waste of time in The Amazing Race, Annabelle?
I feel like I would probably rather U-turn somebody than yield somebody. Because with a U-turn, you send somebody back to complete the other side of the detour. And generally, if they didn't do that side of the detour, it's because they didn't think they could do it, or they thought that it would definitely take them a lot longer than the side they had initially picked. Whereas with yields, they're just kind of hanging out. Like they're just sitting there and waiting. And obviously it puts you at a time disadvantage, but if anything, it kind of gives you more of a time to collect yourself and regain your composure and be like, okay, we have 10 minutes, we can't do anything. Let's just deep breathe. Let's get a game plan together. So I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but I think like of the advantages that are in this race, it's not one of the better ones, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why you would really ever use it. I mean, because even like the teams that are kind of in last place aren't using it on each other. Like Riley and Madison didn't use it. Halen and Haley, they didn't use it. And I think they got there before Michelle and Victoria. Maybe Michelle and Victoria got there before them, but they didn't use it on each other. And I know that they have like a little baby alliance sort of, but I just find it interesting. Like I feel like the yield is a good idea in theory, but it's one of those things that, it's like when we always talk about Survivor. The reason that they're putting so many advantages out there is because they want you to use the advantages, and they're going to try to force your hand to use the advantages. That's why you get an idol and an idol nullifier and to steal a vote and an extra vote and like all of those things. And in this, it doesn't feel like it's incentivized to do this, because if you delay somebody 10 minutes and then they beat you to the next thing, they're going to try to U-turn you or screw you over somehow. So it's just not enough of an advantage.
I mean, maybe it's like too early, but I did forget that like everyone has one. So now would be the time. But maybe it has to do with like some people don't know what place they're in, like especially if you're near the end. Because if you're in first place, like I feel like yielding anybody's a bad idea. But maybe everyone's just trying to save them for the end when 10 or 20 minutes might actually mean something.
Mm-hmm. It could be like a Hail Mary too, if you really feel like it's between you or the other team, you're like, okay, this is all I've got. I'm just going to throw it at the wall and see what sticks. But I kind of agree. I also have to wonder, they know like how many teams are left, and they know that at this point they've had 3 legs and 3 teams have been eliminated. Wouldn't they have to think at this point, okay, maybe we're due for a non-elimination leg?
And that also might be why they don't yield, because I mean, that's a good point. Like, you don't want to yield somebody, because like what happened with Leo and Alana has not come back to haunt Will and James yet, but it's going to at some point. Like, you can tell Leo and Alana are out for blood. It
was just public shaming is what we got
that was
tonight.
So fun. And also
so
like
funny.
Alana's face when she's doing that was one of the most obnoxious but hilarious faces. And then these guys, and I was just like, yes,
like,
yes. Hammer it home, Alana. Let's go. But
nice and awkward. I loved it.
I loved it. But maybe, I mean, if they would have gotten there ahead of Will and James, they probably would have U-turned Will and James. But I just find it interesting that, like, if you're in a non-elimination leg, and even, with Will and James, if you don't get that team out, they're coming for you. It's trying to blindside somebody. I mean, we're talking about Survivor China episode 8 after this, and it's trying to blindside, Jean Robert and not succeeding. They had to succeed on that. Otherwise, he's going to come back all pissed off. And so I don't know. I think the yield, there's no incentive. There really isn't. That's my rant about the yield. What did you all think about? What did you all think about the Alliance of 5, which, by the way, now we're down to 8, and we could have been down to 7 after this. You're really starting to get down to it, guys. But what did you all think about the Alliance of 5 printing out maps of Paraguay while the others didn't even know it was happening?
Is that allowed? I wrote that down. What are the rules there?
You can't have a phone. That's the rule.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that. Yeah. Okay, so you can do that. Because he said that. I think it was James said that. And I was like, oh, they're going to go on computers together. But, like, they don't know what they're doing. So, like, they don't know what they're supposed to do. So I was curious, like, what in the past has happened similarly. I'm fine with it. I mean, I think that's taking advantage of your advantage.
Yeah.
Well, our Survivor boy, Boston Rob, when he was on season 7 of The Amazing Race with Amber, when they were fiancés, like, way before they got married, Rob was kind of one of the first people to utilize the locals and get them on their side to help them with things like, can you help us get to the front of the plane? Can you just open the front doors of the bus? Can you print this for us? Blah, blah, blah. So I think since then we've kind of seen them use the locals to their advantage and try and get things like maps or like the front of the plane or whatever. But it is allowed, and I think Rob was kind of one of the first people to exploit it.
Yeah,
Thank you for incorporating the one necessary Survivor reference that we need every night.
There you go. Yeah. And I do think that in the first season, what were their names? Bill and something. The 2 guys who get 3rd place in it. What was it?
The Guidos, is that who you're talking about in the first season?
I'm talking. They got third place. I don't think they were the Queen. Maybe they were, but they got third place, and they were Bill and Joe. Andy says they were literally in Alaska when the race ended, and like they got a note that was like, "Hey, the amazing race has ended, and you guys are not." So they were the Guidos. You're right. I forgot that they were the Guidos, but I think they tried to kind of do that a little bit, but I don't think they really knew that you got like that you are. I don't think they really like pushed it to that boundary, but they definitely talked to the locals more than any of the other teams that were out there. Cause I remember like they would literally go and have coffee. Like when it was like, oh, it's nighttime, we're going to go sit in the plaza here in Italy. And like, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, they always say like, you can really do anything. Just you can't use like your own cell phone. I believe is really the only rule. And, you know, Annabelle was talking about it, and I'll bring it up every single episode. But when Tommy and Andy end up losing, it's because everybody just follows one person's cell phone signal on one of the cab drivers, and Tommy and Andy didn't have that. And so, yeah, I mean, they can have phones, and that's why you always want to try. And I don't know how it is in Paraguay, but you always want to try to find a place where they do have phones, or a cab driver where they do have phones, so they can take you there. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's something. That's all I got.
I don't know how much that came into play, but thinking back on like the taxi portion of the episode, the teams that got lost were Michelle and Victoria and Kaylin and Haley, who were outside of the alliance. So maybe it did end up playing more of a role, and it just wasn't explicitly stated.
And I think that's a really good point, because they might have said to the person, like, do you know where this is? And literally circled it on the map. Like as soon as they got it, maybe they could find it on the map. Now, granted, they wouldn't have known where they were going until they opened up that clue. But once they opened up that clue and they found out, all right, this is where we're going, they circle it on there and they could show it to the cab driver. And Victoria, Michelle, and Kaylin and Haley couldn't do that. And that could be a big reason why they ended up falling so far behind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that means like they probably did this anyway, like downloaded a map that had major landmarks on it, because just like a road map of Paraguay isn't going to help anybody. But, you know, clearly Will and James are huge Amazing Race fans, as I want to make one reference later, but so they probably knew, okay, like if we're going to print maps out for everybody, they have to include like all these, you know, all these major pit stops.
Yeah. And they knew they were going to Asuncion, or however you pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love this. I feel like Survivor would benefit from this, but Survivor's not the kind of show, but love the home video of Will and James balancing half empty wine bottles on their heads. Like that was so perfect. And that was such a good touch.
That was definitely in their audition tape, and it just worked out perfectly for The Amazing Race.
I know. I thought that was such a good touch. I really liked that.
I totally agree.
A few times like being a super fan could really benefit you in The Amazing Race, because honestly I feel like a lot of it comes down to your communication with your partner, and then your luck when it comes to things like your cabs and navigation and stuff like that. But that was definitely a good example of, oh, we know this, we've seen this episode, we know the tricks, now we're going to execute it.
And now we just need to go buy like 500 watermelons and start stacking them. That's the next one. That's the next,
which we can all fit in our homes.
Yes, exactly. Yes, in our apartments in major cities in America, Alexa. Yeah, that's what we're gonna be doing, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, I love that touch. I think that's a really cool. I always like those little sidebars, because you know, like what you guys were saying earlier, they're software engineers. How much is this really going to help them? But they keep talking about it. Now we really do have a moment where it really helped them. Like it really did help these two people, because they got to like be super fans and say, if we ever get on this show, we're not going to lose because of this. And I actually think it's funny that James was able to do it faster than Will, even though Will's the dancer, and Will was kind of thrown off because he was a dancer. And you would think that he would be the one who would kill that, because it's really dance moves and balance and focus and things like that. And James got it done.
Sure did. Yeah. They were good. Their practicing could not have paid off better.
All right, so it was a non-elimination leg. Alexa, I don't think you've ever seen a speed bump, and if you have, you probably don't remember, huh?
I have never seen a speed bump, or I never paid attention to a speed bump.
There
so
you go.
Correct.
Annabelle, what is Alexa? What should she be prepared for next week with this speed bump for Kaylin and Haley?
So it's basically just like an extra task that they have to do at some point during the leg. So it's usually something that is not that hard or that time consuming. Like I believe in one season, I don't remember which one, they had to paint like an elephant or something. Like it was actually a really cool thing to get to do. And if you weren't panicking and in a rush to catch up with everybody, you'd be like, oh, this is awesome. But it's kind of just something to sideline you for a little bit, to kind of level the playing field since you didn't get tossed out. So I feel like they usually tend to happen toward the beginning of the episode, if I remember correctly.
It normally comes out like right before the roadblock or right before the detour, whatever it is they do first. It normally comes out right before there. And yeah, they literally will take like 5 minutes half the time. Like it's
I was
really
say,
not much
are
of
we doing like a step above making the herbal tea? Like, is that kind of what we're in
honestly
store for?
making the herbal tea is kind of what they would do for a speed bump. I feel like that would have been a good speed bump, and that would give you like, it would just be a little bit out of the way and something that's just going to take you, and it's going to take you maybe 20 extra minutes from everybody else. So it could screw you over, but it's really just like 20 minutes.
It's always in the area too. Like there would be like a sign, I guess, like next to the roadblock section or next to the detour section being like, hey, Kaylin and Haley, like this is your speed bump. So you know where to go next or where you have to come from. So navigation typically isn't a factor with those either.
And this one's great. Here's Gamer Girl. In one season, they had to sit on a chair carved out of ice.
Yes, I do remember that one.
What was it,
I'm
like
really
for 2
looking forward to
seconds,
this.
or they have to stay there for a while?
I think it was like 10
You have to
minutes or
sit
something.
on have a cold butt for like the next 10 minutes and then you can go. Where are they going? Do we know where they're going?
Paris. Mhm.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So maybe, I don't know, painting. I'm trying to think of something French. We'll find out.
Climb the Eiffel Tower? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they I could see them doing something where like, okay, you have to go to like the observation deck of the Eiffel Tower and take a picture of this mime waving, and then like you literally just like do that and go to the mime and he gives you what your actual clue is. Like, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but I could definitely see something like that being how it goes down here.
Sure.
What do you guys think of the travel route so far?
I think it's fun, and I watched The Amazing Race for the wrong reasons, which is because it's on TV. That was pretty much always it.
Hey,
like,
that's fine.
Even like back in the day, like I remember, the school I went to, my Spanish teacher used to do a trip over the summer where like they would go to Europe and you know, it was like maybe go to like 5 or 6 different kind of like a Euro trip for like a month in the summer. And he would always watch The Amazing Race because he would be like, oh, we went there, or we went there, or we went. And I'm like, oh, that's like a cool cobblestone street. Okay, where are you going next? Like, what's that? Like, I'm more into it for the competition of it than I really am for the location. But I have to say, I really do like these locations because, you know, it's the same thing with Survivor. It can get a little stale when you're constantly going to the same spots over and over. And like seeing them go down the Amazon in Brazil has been pretty cool. I liked tonight's in Paraguay. I don't know if I've ever seen a street in Paraguay before. Like, I think that might be the first time I've ever actually seen an image of Paraguay. I don't think I ever have before.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so is it normally, so where did we start? Where was like the first? Okay. So I guess, does it usually follow like a general circle, or do we, cause it's like kind of working right now.
But what's funny about this whole thing is normally like they started in LA, and this blows my mind. Why are you starting in LA and then flying to Trinidad and Tobago? Why are you not starting in New York? Because they normally would start in like New York or Florida.
That is an unnecessary flight.
You made everybody fly out to Los Angeles, California, so then they could fly 7 hours across the country and land in the Caribbean. Come on.
They could have gone to like Japan, anywhere in Oceania. Anywhere in the South Pacific, that would have been a better place to start. But
maybe they're just trying to get the jet lag on them early. But yeah, that's a really good point. You added just like 5 extra hours to their flight for no reason.
I know D'Angelo Williams played for the Carolina Panthers. Now I don't know what he does now, and he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
He sets up IKEA furniture.
Yeah, but I don't I don't know where he's doing that. I mean, they don't have like the New York IKEA furniture setter uppers, so like I don't know like where he's located. But like if he's still located in Carolina or Pittsburgh, he literally get on a plane for 6 hours. Like, and I do this flight a lot going from LA to New Jersey. Get on a plane for 6 hours, then just turn around and get on a plane for 7. Like that sucks. That really sucks. So I don't know. I mean, thank you for pointing that out, Annabelle, because it didn't really click in my head. And Alexa, I wish you would have ranted about that in the first episode.
Yeah,
I mean,
I didn't even think about that.
To go like throughout South America, you definitely never want to go to a continent, leave, and then come back. That's unbelievably dumb. So at least they've done a little nice tour of South America here, and now it sounds like they're going to Europe with Paris. But
does this pretty much take out of the equation that they would go to Africa, considering they're going from South America to Europe? Wouldn't they probably go from South America to Africa, or is there still a chance they might go to Africa just closer to Asia?
It could go down.
It's
And by down, I mean south.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
I feel like typically they go to, I think there was a handful of seasons where they went to 5 continents in total, but it's usually 4. And they almost always like to have a couple of legs in Asia because that's where people really get flustered.
Well, I know they're going to Kazakhstan at some point in the season.
Oh, really? That's good to know. People get so flustered over there with like the language barrier, and I think the crowds overwhelm everybody. And like any leg where they are in any city in India just looks like an absolute nightmare.
I would quit every time.
That's
no way.
Like, you're going to India. Like, great, I'm out.
See, thank you, Jeff. I just tore my Achilles, and I will be on the next plane out of here. Yeah, no, and I know what you mean. So I was just more curious. I always like when they go to Africa. I find Africa to just be like one of those cool. I don't know if I'll ever go to Africa. So like whenever like I get to watch it or see anything that takes place there, I always feel like it's really cool to see. And like I even liked when they went to Nigeria. I guess that was last season. Was that on the Big Brother one where they went to there? And I think oh my God, what were their names? I forget what their names were, but I think it was Nigeria. It was like, ooh, we don't like gay people. Please stay away from us. And like, they were seriously like concerned the entire time. Why can I not remember their names? Sorry, Andy, help me. What are the name of the guys?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm forgetting, but I remember that. But like, I still like, it's cool to kind of see like the cultures and stuff. Cause I feel like, especially like when you're American, you do go like Europe is the most popular place. There you go. Thank you, Andy, Tyler and Corey. But, Europe, it's the most popular place to kind of like vacation if you're going to go to a different continent. I don't feel like people go to South America that much. I don't feel like people go to Africa that much. And then I guess if you live on the West Coast, you'll go to Asia a little bit more. But I feel like Europe is a bit the most basic. So I always like to see like Africa, and I've been enjoying the South America. I think it's been really fun to watch.
I'm liking it too. Yeah.
I totally agree. I'm kind of surprised that they're going to Paris. Because I mean, is that not the most basic place in Europe to go? Like Europe, like you have London and you have Paris and you have Rome, and I feel like those are kind of the big 3 that Americans tend to like to visit and hit. And I mean, I haven't been to Paris, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that'll have a fun leg, but I think it's cool when they go to like, I don't know, Eastern Europe or somewhere like Liechtenstein, however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
You go to one of those tiny towns in like Germany. Or I know they did like the one in the Swiss Alps the one time, which was insane. I mean, they literally were just like, they were so high. That was the one with Connor and his dad. I forget his dad's name, but
maybe they weave in and out, because like Trinidad and Tobago is like not in the top like 30 countries I would have thought they would start at. So maybe they weave in and out of like the basic versus non-basic locations.
Alexa, are you saying that like out of all the Caribbean countries, Trinidad and Tobago isn't the number 1 on your list?
It's my number 1 tourist destination for the past.
I actually think I've been there. I think like a cruise stopped there once, so I think I have been there. Yeah, and so I'm worldly. I swirl my
Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, I've been to 2 places at once.
Horrible cruise with your drink package.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I was wasted on a college cruise. Yeah,
and I have my fanny pack on because what's more American than a fanny pack? So,
wine shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm the most stereotypical tourist. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm excited to see where they go in Paris. Andy said here he thinks that they're flying to Paris and then driving to a different part of France. They wouldn't give them cars if they were staying in the city. That could make a lot of sense. That could be something that they do is they go to Paris and then it's like, all right, now you got to drive to, one of those out there places. I feel like The Amazing Race tries to keep them out of cities a lot of the time, just because the cities are probably a pain for the cameramen and the production team to film in. They want space, and if you're in a city, you're not going to get that.
If you were on the show, would you rather be having to like either take public transportation or taxis everywhere, or would you rather be able to drive yourself? Because you have the navigation factor, but at least it's under your control.
I'm such a control freak. So my first thought would be, I want to be in control. I want to drive. But I don't know. I'm like okay with maps, but not knowing, but being in control, I don't know if that's worth it.
Alexa, can you drive stick?
I was about to say that. They're always
Yeah, I've the one thing I know about Amazing Race is you do have to know how to drive stick. I know how to. I cannot say that I'm good at it.
Good, gotcha. But that's the one thing you always got to do, because I think I do think that like I'd rather drive, but because I'm not comfortable driving stick, that would be a problem. But man, getting in a taxi, you just don't want to put your fate in somebody else's hands. Like if I'm going to lose the Amazing Race, I want to lose the Amazing Race because I was an idiot, because I messed something up, because I didn't stack my watermelons correctly, because I didn't remember my bag, because I don't want to lose the Amazing Race because somebody took me down some sketchy alley in Paraguay. That's not fun to me.
Yeah, no,
What about you, Annabelle?
That would be a hard way to go down, just being like stuck in a taxi, just knowing that you're about to be eliminated. I think, at least if you're driving yourself, you have nobody to blame but yourself, and you don't really have to have that what if factor because you just know you took a wrong turn or something like that. There was one season though where the teams had to drive themselves, and a couple of teams, they got speeding tickets and they had to leave the course of the race. They had to go to like a local municipal police precinct and pay off their speeding ticket with their race money.
I remember that.
So that's always a risk,
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember that. That's funny. All right. So just to like kind of look at the standings here, we had Will and James coming first. Michelle and Victoria were second. Leo and Alana were third. Both of them moved up 5 places from last episode. Do we think that was a fluke, or do we think that Michelle and Victoria and Leo and Alana are actually going to be hanging around in the top half of this grouping?
What's your take, Annabelle?
I think if Michelle and Victoria can continue to stay positive and just communicate with each other and not panic, I don't necessarily see them winning, but I don't think they're going to go home in the next couple of episodes either, as long as they keep their composure. And then Leo and Alana, I just feel like they've kind of built up this storyline with them against Will and James. Mm-hmm. So I feel like either Will and James or Leo and Alana have to be taken down shortly.
I think it's going to be Will and James, though. I think Leo and Alana are actually going to last longer. I feel like Leo and Alana have more legs.
Yeah, winning places in a row can kind of complacent, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I know that edit isn't nearly a thing in Amazing Race as it is in Survivor, but I do feel like Leo and Alana have this growth edit. And Will and James, they were the bad guys last week, and now the thing about them is like they're not like evil villains, because this was a very just like, oh my gosh, like they're super fans, look how this worked out for them kind of episode, and they're they were being really happy, like no spite or anything. But you're right, I think their storylines are tied together. If there were a double episode that like was planned, like I know that now there's gonna be a double episode in 2 weeks, but that's because tonight's got preempted. I would say, oh, well, they would go home in those back-to-back episodes, or they would both be in the finale together. So that's my thought.
Have y'all had the winner picks like on last couple of episodes about Amazing Race?
I don't know if we have said our winner picks.
Who would you, Annabelle, at this point, who do you think is going to win this?
The thing about the race is all you have to do is get to the finale. You don't have to win a single leg. It does not necessarily benefit you to win every single leg if you cannot make it to the finale. So Riley and Madison, the Beards, they've kind of been in like that middle of the pack 3-4 range where they're not really in trouble, but they're never really winning either. Mm-hmm. But they don't seem like they have any issues with each other, and they don't seem like they have any issues with anybody else. And we know they're athletic, so I think they are potential contenders for the end. That's what I would say.
They seem to have the communication that we thought that Hung and Chi had. They, I think, have a very like not loosey-goosey outlook, but when Madison was struggling making the cello. Riley was like, this sucks, but like, it's going to be fine. They seem to have like a positive attitude when they're stressed. And I think that's going to work out for them. I could totally see them winning.
Yeah, I have Riley and Madison too. They finished fourth again. I mean, they just keep finishing in like fourth place, and they keep landing in the same spot. And you know, they should be so threatening, but they're just not really threatening. I mean, they're just not coming across as threatening as they should. So yeah, I have Riley and Madison. I have them. I think that's who's probably going to win. And I still think Hung and Chi, they had a big fall off this week. First time they finally had a bad week, but the fact that they were able to change detours and still do pretty well. Finish sixth, beat Gary and D'Angelo, beat Kaylin and Haley. It's smart. It shows that, like, okay, we know what our weakness is. We're never going to figure this out. Let's go do it. And it's a completely different task, one that the two of them should not be great at, and they got it done. No problem. So I could still see them as well, for sure.
Switching detours is always such a gamble.
Oh, yeah. D'Angelo asked Gary to, and Gary was like, no. And they would have never gotten that bottle thing.
Oh.
There's no way.
No
way. No way.
No. All right. What else do we have left? Anything that we've missed so far?
Annabelle, anything?
Joel, notice anything, I guess, compelling about the preview for next week?
It wasn't on tonight. I was just confused.
Yeah, I was like, are they like spoiling something because they're about to put on another episode? Turns out they were not. I don't think so. I mean, this didn't have, I candidly don't remember it as well as I have for others, but this didn't have the like, oh gosh, they're upset in the boat, or like, oh no, Kaylin and Haley are having a hard time in the cab. There was no like, oh gosh, something really bad is happening for this one couple. So I have no guesses.
Yeah. I didn't really get anything from it either. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Kaylin and Haley starting in last and being the team that's going to have the speed bump, like, they're kind of my favorite to lose pretty much every week right now, like, because I don't really have much from their personality, and then also I just don't see them going very far. But I don't think the speed bump's going to make that much of an impact, and we know they're going to go to Paris right away, so they're all going to be on the same plane. So what's that going to do? So I don't really have much to say about for what I think's going to happen next week.
Yeah, I would agree. It'll just be interesting to see how they do with the speed bump, if it's something they can kind of tackle quickly and get back on track with everyone else, or if it'll delay them a lot more than maybe it should.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for our episode 4 recap. I know it might say episode 4 and 5, but you can blame The Amazing Race. I'm trying to change it, and you can blame StreamYard. It won't change. So I'm trying, everybody, but it's just not working. But yeah, that was a good episode. Annabelle, really happy to have you on. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a little disappointing, but you know.
No, it was such an honor. I mean, Alexa messaged me and I was like, yes, here we go. So thank you guys for having me. It was definitely an honor to be on the podcast I've streamed so many episodes of.
There you go. Well, it was great having you on, and we'll have to do it again sometime. Alexa, what are we doing in 10 minutes?
In 10 minutes, no earlier, no later, we are going to be recapping the 8th episode of Survivor China. This is a really good episode. I will not spoil it, but you all know what happens. We're going to be joined by another one of our patrons, Ian Moorhead. So we're going to be chatting with him right after this. So a little nice. We're doing it at 10:30, or we're doing it at 10:40 instead of doing it at 11 p.m. And we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep the Amazing Race recaps right after the episodes on Wednesdays. They're going to be at 9 p.m. moving forward, and continue our Survivor China rewatches right after that. We do have one addition to our rotation. Starting this Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're probably going to be changing the dates a little bit, but we're going to keep these on Mondays. We are dabbling in International Survivor. We are never going to watch Big Brother, but it is about damn time that we watch International Survivor. Phil is a very busy man for the foreseeable future, so I am actually going to be doing this with McKenna Feeney, who joined us last week for an Amazing Race recap. So we're starting with Australian Survivor Season 2. We were told that Season 2 is comparable to some of the best American Survivor seasons, so we're really diving into this and hoping it makes sense. So join us this Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern to give that a watch. I also saw there are 24 episodes, so we may have to change up the timing a little bit. But for now, we're going to recap just one episode at a time.
Yeah, Alexa, I'll see you in July of next
Yeah,
year
talk
when we
to you guys
finally get to
next
the
year.
finale. But yeah, that'll be good. And yeah, that's it. That's what's going on. Annabelle, thanks for coming on. And everybody, we will see you in a little bit if you're watching China, and in a week if you're watching The Amazing Race, and in 5 days if you're watching Australian Survivor.
Wow.